Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to The Great Retention with Camber Parker, sponsored by the YoPro. I'm Camber, your young professional expert and founder of the YoPro, where we bring you the answers you need to know about how to attract and retain the best talent, starting with the young professionals you work with. There are a lot of young professional fish in the sea, as we like to say, but how do you catch them? And what do you do once you reel them in? That's where we come in. Today, I am thrilled to have David Hyde-Volpe join us, founder of Dodo Consulting and Chief Technology Officer at the Visius Group in Greenville, South Carolina. Did I get that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, great. You can correct me if I'm wrong. We met through a speaking opportunity earlier this year, and I immediately knew that he was someone that I and our audience needed to get to know and get plugged in with. So David is a technology consultant and specializes in AI, among other tech-related focus areas. Today, we're going to be covering all things AI, ChatGPT, all automation, right? And how it's impacting, you guessed it, young professionals. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I've been very excited about this, and I think our audience will be too. So to get started, we're going to do what I like to call a lightning round. So tell us in a few sentences or less, a few questions. So one, what is something that is not on your resume?
Not on my resume. Let's see. I don't have, I think, my service work on my resume. So I had a stint in graduate school where I had to just dump all the technical work I was doing and just go into a service-oriented work field. So I was doing waiting at a high-end restaurant. I ran housekeeping at a hotel, and just kind of lived in that service world for a while. And that was really fun. I just got to connect with people and socialize and got out of the technical space because I was in chemistry and I was just getting burned out, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really important for everybody to have some type of service role because you do really learn how to interact with people and treat people well.
Yeah.
And you can see the people that don't, I think, and that's also just impactful and probably transfers into what you do today.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing that. What is your preferred AI platform? I had to ask.
Yeah. So I think the best model out there right now is, this is not going to be a surprise to most who are in this area, but GPT, the OpenAI, GPT-4 is kind of the best, most general smart platform for right now. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, we'll dive more into that today, of course. Can you share a memorable experience that you've had either working with a young professional or maybe a lesson that you have learned as a young professional? What did that look like?
Yeah. So I do a decent amount of mentoring. I think I'm very passionate about mentoring. It's what's gotten me to where I am, and so I like to give that back. And just young people are just looking, especially I find with young men, are looking for someone older to affirm them in what they're doing. To just be proud of them. I don't know if I can put it a better way, but they don't always get that at home, and they go into the workplace and they don't know how to ask for it, but that's what they're really looking for. And I'm not talking about empty praise, right? But I'm talking about actually getting to know someone, knowing what they're struggling with and knowing what they're working on, and actually seeing them. And then speaking that, I think it's awkward for both sides. It's awkward to say that out loud to someone, but the more you do it, the easier it gets, and it's incredibly powerful. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you for what you do. It sounds like you do a lot outside of just your 9 to 5, right. And that's really, I think, what makes for the best leaders. So thank you for sharing that and for doing that. So obviously today we were talking about AI in the workplace, but more specifically how it will impact the young professional generations. So let's first talk about the immediate shifts that we are already seeing with everybody, so not necessarily just young professionals, with AI and how it's impacting businesses, our economy, and our communities. And I know it's a loaded question, but obviously when we first connected, which was maybe 4 or 6 months ago, so much has changed since then. So give us the lay of the land right now.
Yeah. So everyone is grappling with this from different directions right now. Government's getting involved in a big way. The Congress has started to convene panels to look into how they should regulate this. The White House is preparing to release sort of an executive order on how they would like to see AI handled. The business community is, of course, working with the White House, working with Congress. But those, when I say the business community, I really mean the big players in the business community. But this is reverberating all the way up and down. Some tech waves you see only are for the big players in the beginning, and no one else gets to really play, just because of how expensive it is to be involved. But this is different. This is different partially because of what OpenAI decided to do in making this available to everyone.
Yeah.
That was a big decision that they've gotten some flack for, but their stance was, this is going to change our society. It's going to change how we work, how we live. And the sooner we make it open to everyone to experience and not just the big players, the better. So we can start to have these hard conversations and figure out, how do we want to use it? What do we want the future of work to look like? Because for the big players in the tech industry, this is not new. This is new to most of us because of what OpenAI decided to do. But this is a wave that's been coming. You know, it's been obvious to those in the tech world for probably since 2018 that we're headed to something like this. I don't think people predicted it would be this big, this fast. But OpenAI kind of shattered those expectations for people and now opened the door to everyone to play. Of course, that's created a little chaos.
Yeah, I would say a lot of chaos. I mean, really, because they released it in November of 22, correct?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So since then, it just seems, it just seems like they made it available to maybe the public. Right, most people.
And then 4 came, I think, in March maybe of 2023, and that's when capabilities really exploded.
And now there's so many types of AI out there. So can you maybe help us digest some of that? And obviously, like you said, there's GPT, but what else is out there? Because I know there's countless products. So are there any maybe like categories you can share, or just a couple of highlights? Yeah.
So, I'm using AI very colloquially today. There are more technical definitions you can get into, and there's whole different worlds of different types of intelligences or machine learning or data analysis. And the one that's kind of grabbed everyone's attention is generative AI, which is essentially using a neural network with some really fancy statistics to generate some kind of content. And within that world, there's a number of different subcategories of how you go about doing that. And it can get really technical, but essentially, one thing I want people to understand, because this is going to become a very important conversation as it relates to copyright. It's my opinion and my understanding of the technology that the hot take that it's like a bunch of little clips of content that it sort of regurgitates is not accurate.
Right.
A lot of the arguments for some of the copyright folks, the folks that are offended that their works are going to be used in a way they didn't get compensated for, are going to make the argument that that's what's happening. That it's storing a bunch of clips of a little bit of text, some pieces of images, and that it's like a collage, and that it kind of pulls them together. My understanding of how the technology works is it's not like that at all. Instead, it's a lot more like how our brains work.
Right. I remember from our first conversation. So expand a little bit more on that.
Yeah. So the way our brains seem to work is that we have these neurons, these cells in our brains, and they connect to other neurons. And there's a whole bunch of them. And the strength of those connections between the different neurons varies. So some of them are tightly connected and some are weakly connected. And the brain also has the capacity to change the strength of those connections over time. And so it sounds a little bit odd if you've never looked into how neurons work, but just from that alone, having a whole bunch of neurons and having them connected with different strengths, you can take input and transform it into some kind of output. So, for instance, the input might be something you look at, a picture, and the output might be an emotion or something you say to describe it. And again, if you've never really looked into it, it sounds really weird, but it's simply the strength of these connections between these neurons is what enables our brain to do that. And what these generative AIs are trying to do under a bunch of statistics and other things they're doing, but at the root of it, it's a neural network that functions in much the same way. There's these sort of digital neurons that are connected to each other. And you'll hear terms like, GPT has 4 billion parameters or whatever. And usually what they're talking about is each one of those neurons connecting to each other neuron has a certain connection strength, and that's a parameter. And so by varying those parameters, you can get this network that takes in something like a prompt, like saying, create me a painting in the style of Van Gogh, and output a painting in the style of Van Gogh. And it's a little bit spooky how it works.
I was going to say, like, it's spooky to hear. It's also from a young professional's perspective, it's pretty amazing that there's something like this. But that just kind of dives in a little bit to what I want to talk about next, which is how is this going to impact young professionals? Because I certainly think that, as we've seen in the news, it's impacting jobs, right? So I really want to talk a lot about that today. And so I would love to hear your perspective. First and foremost, how is this going to impact young professionals? Because they're the future leaders. And so we have a lot of baby boomers who are, maybe looking at AI in a negative light, but they're going to be leaving soon. They're going to be exiting the workforce. So really it's the young professionals that are going to be left to figure out how to manage and maintain AI. So tell us a little bit more from your perspective about how this is going to impact that generation.
Yeah, I mean, it's already impacting and they're already using it, right? So what I find when I talk to companies, because I help companies adopt AI, figure out how to use it safely. And when I have those conversations, I'm talking to the business leaders, but I'm also talking, all the way through the rank and file. And what I'm finding consistently is that the younger members of the team are already using these technologies. Now, they're not getting all the value out of it that they could be. And so we help them with that, and we help them to use it more safely. But they're already figuring it out. And so it's the effect that's having is making them incredibly productive. I'll give you some concrete examples. I was working with this young guy in construction, and you might not think that this is the use case for construction, but he's part of the process of moving it from a sale, initial sale, let's say of a remodel of an expensive house, to an actual production.
Okay.
And so he has to communicate with the clients. And this individual, writing emails was not something that was very comfortable for him. He's very comfortable with all the parts of building the house and all, but communicating with clients was a challenge. And it would take up hours of his day communicating with clients. Well, I showed him how to do it with ChatGPT, and now he's writing those in minutes instead of hours. And the emails are so crisp and clean and well-written and professional that the owners of the company are now taking his emails and passing them around the whole company, saying, guys, this is how you should be writing your emails, right?
That's really cool.
It went from a place of concern and weakness to a place of strength for him professionally.
Yeah, well, I love to hear that. Kudos to you. That's a great case study, right? To see showing how you can help these companies, because I definitely want people to understand how they can work with you, and so that's a great example of one of many ways that they can work with you. But for most of these listeners on the show, they are these business leaders, right, who are really struggling, looking for new ways to be proactive in attracting and retaining talent. I think AI is a way that they can really do that, right? They can enhance their attracting and retaining talent. So how can they do that? Do you have any platforms that you recommend if companies are looking to do that?
Sorry, to understand your question, platforms that companies, business leaders can use to attract talent in particular?
Yeah, or retain talent. There might be, there's a lot of, I know there's a lot of capabilities for AI. So one of the things that I'm also seeing a lot in media articles today about AI and GPT in the workplace, it's just unclear which jobs it's going to impact most. Sometimes I feel like it's going to impact young professionals because they're the ones that are in the entry-level jobs most likely. Sometimes I hear it's the experienced professionals because some of them, they can just fill in the gap. So in your opinion, will AI impact young professionals' jobs or senior leader positions more, or is it just a little bit of a combo? Can you dive into that more?
Yeah. So the impact on jobs is going to be a big one. It's something we're going to have to figure out as a society, as business leaders. We're going to have to think through that. As these sorts of impacts start to hit in more meaningful ways, it's going to be important to get ahead of that and have a clear policy and direction for your company on how you're going to use AI and how that's going to impact people. In particular, if most of your employees are knowledge workers, meaning people that are employed productively for the output of their minds. Those are a lot of changes we've seen in labor over the last 50 years or 75 years or even 150 years. I mean, really going back as far as the Industrial Revolution, the impacts to labor have mostly come where people are paid for the output of their hands. Mm-hmm. This will be one of the first large impacts to knowledge workers.
Yeah.
And we're not really used to seeing that. And so I think there's going to be some surprises for some folks. Mm-hmm. But we are not yet at the point where there's going to be wholesale replacement of people with this technology.
Right.
There's going to be a little bit of time to adjust, but it's going to move fairly fast. Mm-hmm. So as far as specific age, I think in general, younger people, regardless of position, will be able to weather the transition better, both because they're paid a little less and because they are more flexible to adapt to new technologies in general. But the bigger determiner of whether your employment or labor is affected is going to be, what are you paid to do? Mm-hmm. If it's to produce ideas, that's going to be affected.
Yeah.
If it's to produce content that can be generated, that's going to be affected. Mm-hmm. And I think labor will move to be more of a shepherd of the generation of content than necessarily generating it themselves from scratch. So the blank page goes away.
Yeah.
And it's replaced with a first draft that you're responsible for talking to an AI to goad it in a direction that you want. So you still have to save all the same analysis capacity, but you're spending less time on each individual project and you can do more.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's really powerful just the concept of how labor is now shifting in this very new direction, which obviously is going to scare anybody. But I love your point about young professionals being flexible, which is very much a characteristic of this next generation. They'll be able to weather it. And then I think it's just that much more important for the business leaders, the owners and the senior leaders to train and develop their next generation of talent to understanding how to use this, because that's going to, I think, separate companies from those who don't, right? If you really can train your next generation to use it safely as you teach different companies to do, and to embrace it and learn how to maximize your workforce, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be really important.
And if I could, there's one area in particular I want to highlight, which is I was speaking with the leader of a very extremely large professional services company. Mm-hmm. And he was saying that their junior members, their junior consultants, their junior analysts, at this point with where the technology is, they could completely replace those people right now. They've chosen not to. The reason those people are replaceable right now with the technology is that the way they've systematized at that company, their junior role, they literally get handed essentially what looks like a GPT prompt, and they're to generate about a one-page response with references that then gets handed off to a more senior analyst to take the next step. And so because they've broken that role out in exactly that way, they could basically one-for-one replace that person with a GPT-4. But they've recognized a trap, which is that's where all their future analysts, senior analysts, and leaders come from. And so they're not going that direction. And I think we're seeing a lot of businesses make that same decision. But as these models get better and better, we're going to have more and more roles that fall into that slot. Yeah. And it's going to become more and more tempting for business leaders to try that just because of the cost savings that you can get.
Of course.
So I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, we'll make sure we stay connected with you to make sure we know everything that's coming down the road. A few more questions before we wrap up today, because of course we only have a short period of time. But how can companies educate their workforce, their future talent in these AI practices? What are some tools, recommendations? And obviously feel free to share your tools, because it's obviously a really great way for people to educate and develop their talent, which is a great retention tool.
Yeah. I think the first step, like anything, is educate yourself if you're a business leader, right? And that, it's funny. The question is, how do you train your your talent, your team members, but you may find that they can train you. You may have someone inside of your company already that knows how to use some of this technology and could show you how to use it. And then, you could work with them maybe to develop an internal plan of how to bring everyone else along into how to use it productively and safely. I'm just make a quick note. I said safely, and one of the big things I want people to think about with these technologies is your data and privacy, especially if it's customer data.
Yeah.
If you're just taking this data and throwing it into like a ChatGPT, if you haven't worked out some arrangement with them where they're not training on your data, know that data all goes into the training. So if you're putting customer data or data that you've been entrusted to keep safe, you're not doing that if you just put it into the ChatGPT. So
yeah, no, great. I'm glad you said that.
there are
Disclaimer.
ways to use the technology while you preserve privacy, but it involves like standing up your own sort of ChatGPT-like clone inside your environment.
Yeah.
And that's something that I help people do.
Awesome. And we need a lot more people probably like you out there right now because of just the significance of this new wave.
Yeah.
So,
but to get back to answering your original question, which was how do you go about training folks on this new stuff? What I've been seeing that works pretty well is to pull in, once you kind of understand the technology or you bring in a consultant or someone who understands it, pulling people voluntarily, pulling them from different areas of business. And I mean all across the board. If you can get someone from every team or every department, more's the better. But you pull them in, you have them commit, like they're going to be interested in learning about this. They're going to play with it at least once a day, and they're going to document the way they use it. And then you just get together once a month, once a week, whatever tempo feels good for you, and you have people share. And they share about how they've been using it, successes, failures.
Yeah.
And then that you write that down, you document that in some kind of a knowledge base. And then that way you can build it up and then you can kind of push those out once they're ready to those individual teams, right? And they've been written by members of that team.
Yeah.
And so now you have champions within each of the teams that kind of get it. And
that's great.
That's a model I've seen.
That's a really great takeaway that people who are listening and watching can actively start applying. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Is there anything else, David, that we have not touched on today that you feel is impactful for this conversation?
Yeah. I think we are being tasked with a grand challenge right now. And that's part of being human, is encountering grand challenges and then rising to meet them. So we have a great opportunity, which is we have a whole new way of doing work.
Yep.
And it's going to impact people positively and negatively. And our challenge is to meet that as humans and not just econs. So that's what I would say is sort of the big philosophical thing to chew on is be a human, don't just be an econ.
Wow, that's a mic drop, pencil drop moment to end the show today. David, I wish we could talk to you longer because this is just really a taste of the conversation about AI. But we will encourage everybody who is listening and watching to find you. We'll link to how people can find you. But what's the best way for you to start an engagement with somebody if they are interested? Because I'm sure some people will be.
I think a lot of people that I don't meet in person just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I think it's a great way. You just search my name. It's pretty unique.
Yeah, it is.
So I think you'll find me.
It'll be in the comments, everybody.
But I look at everyone that reaches out to me on LinkedIn. At least for now, I can keep up with that.
Yeah.
And,
well, you've been wonderful. And really, it's just been great to get to know you. And I look forward to staying connected and just really appreciate you being on the show.
Awesome. Thanks,
you. Thanks, David. Thanks again for joining us on The Great Retention with Camper Parker. Before you go, remember this. Young professionals make up nearly half of the workforce today and are expected to jump at a rapid pace in this next decade. What will you do to help them become the great leaders we need for our future? Join us next time for more information on how to attract and retain young professionals. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to rate us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. This helps others who are interested in this topic find us. And also, don't forget to share with your coworkers. Until next time, we'll see you soon.